John Wesley Shipp once overheated inside his own costume, trapped under 40 pounds of foam latex built just to look heroic. Every live-action Flash suit since has been a quiet correction, chasing the comfort and color that first suit sacrificed for spectacle. Decades of redesigns later, nobody stopped to ask why the comics had already solved this problem before television ever tried. The Flash 1990 suit, John Wesley Shipp put on a superhero costume in 1990, and it nearly cooked him alive. Not figuratively. The suit trapped heat so badly that Shipp needed a cooling vest just to survive being the fastest man alive. The irony writes itself: a speedster buried under 40 pounds of foam latex, built so heavy he could barely jog between takes. When The Flash premiered on CBS on September 20, 1990, designer Robert Short wanted a hero who looked carved out of the comics, all sculpted muscle and impossible proportions. So he built it. Layers of foam latex musculature stacked over a base suit, turning an average build into something that looked drawn by an artist who had never met a real human ribcage. The results were staggering, and not in a good way. The suit weighed around 40 pounds, roughly the same as carrying 2 car batteries strapped to your chest while sprinting. Shipp could only film in short bursts before overheating became a genuine safety concern. Production kept multiple suits in rotation, including separate stunt and close-up versions, since the foam latex broke down fast under studio lighting and needed constant repair just to look presentable on camera. Even the emblem got the exaggeration treatment. A bigger, rounder chest symbol with a thick yellow ring and a bolt stylized just enough to survive the fuzz of analog television. Look at the cowl and you see exactly what the production feared: sculpted cheekbones, a fixed chin strap, a statue-like rigidity that barely let Shipp move his own face. Nothing in the show says it outright, but follow the logic. Nobody accidentally designs a mask that limits blinking. That is a choice made by people who did not trust color and spandex alone to read as heroic. Somewhere under all that latex was an actor sweating through takes, so the character could look strong enough for fans who just wanted their comic book hero standing in front of them. That tension never left the franchise. It just changed shape. But when the next attempt came decades later, the designers swung hard the other way, ditching foam muscles for leather and armor panels. So scared of looking campy, they gave a bright comic hero the color of a dark biker gang, CW Flash Season 1. Grant Gustin ran his first mile as the Flash wearing a suit that looked less like a superhero costume and more like something a stunt biker would wear to a funeral. Dark, almost burgundy leather, zero brightness anywhere on it. This was the suit that finally got a Flash show on the air after decades of false starts, and the costume department's answer was to hide the one color the character is famous for. The pilot suit wasn't even the real suit. It got tweaked and locked in by episode 2, and what they landed on was armor first, symbol second. Visible seams running down the arms. Reinforced panels at the knees and elbows like Barry was expected to eat pavement on a weekly basis. In canon, Cisco Ramon built the thing at STAR Labs as a firefighting prototype, engineered to survive the friction and heat of Barry's own speed cooking him alive from the inside. That's a smart piece of writing. It's also a costume department covering its own nerves with a lab coat. Look at the chest. The lightning bolt sits on a red circle instead of the white one every comic reader grew up with. That's not a small choice. White on red says finished hero. Red on red says unfinished prototype, something still being tested on a man who volunteered his body before anyone signed off on the results. Add the chin strap under the cowl, a tiny detail so specific that fans used it like a fingerprint to date early promo photos. And you've got a suit built to whisper "we're not confident yet" in every frame. Nothing in the show says the costume department was scared of looking like 1990 again, but follow the pattern. Bulk became leather, foam became seams, and bright became burgundy. Same anxiety, different disguise. Somewhere in a writer's room, a grown man was being asked to risk his life every episode in a suit that couldn't even commit to its own logo yet. The very next year, they'd quietly admit that hiding the color was a mistake, and a single change to one circle on his chest would be treated by fans like a graduation ceremony. CW Flash Season 2, one white circle. That is the entire upgrade, and it somehow became the moment fans decided Barry Allen had finally earned his own costume. The suit itself barely moved. Same dark red, same leather build, same chin strap holding the cowl together like a bike helmet designed by someone who feared color. But on October 6, 2015, the show swapped the solid red patch behind the lightning bolt for a plain white circle, and the internet lost its mind over a background shape. Look closer and the reasoning gets clearer. Barry just finished burying Reverse Flash. He is done running from his own reflections, so the costume department gave him one piece of the actual comic emblem to prove it. The white circle sits behind the bolt exactly like Silver Age Flash, exactly like the version fans had been begging for since 2014. That is not a coincidence. That is a costume department finally listening. They also added thin piping around the shoulders and emblem subtle lines that pull your eye straight to Barry's chest every time he stands still. Small detail, big difference. Lighting got warmer too, so the same fabric that looked like a wet trash bag in Season 1 now catches highlights during action scenes. Suddenly, the suit had dimension instead of just mass. Promo shoots leaned on this version so hard it became the default Flash image sold on shirts, posters, and toy packaging for years. You've probably seen this exact suit on a lunchbox somewhere. None of that required new tailoring. It required one prop department deciding a circle was allowed to exist. That is the part worth sitting with. A single background swap became the most talked about superhero costume tweak of the entire mid-2010s television era. And that reaction only makes sense if fans had been starving for permission to see their hero look like the page he came from. People do not celebrate a circle. People celebrate finally being taken seriously after a year of being told grounded and gritty was the mature choice. Barry got his white circle and the fandom treated it like a coronation. That tells you the correction was already overdue, and it tells you the people running this show noticed. Once an audience reacts that hard to that little, you do not walk it back. So they kept going. Quietly, panel by panel, the leather started shrinking and the bulk started disappearing, and almost nobody clocked it happening in real time. CW Flash Season 3. This is the suit nobody can describe from memory, and that is exactly the point. Ask a fan to picture Season 3 and most of them just picture Season 2 with slightly better lighting. That is not a failure. That is a costume department succeeding so quietly they erased their own paper trail. Premiering on October 4th, 2016, the Season 3 suit looks, at a glance, like a rerun. Same white emblem sitting dead center on the chest. Same chin strap holding the cowl in place. Zero loud changes, zero press moment, nothing you would circle in a screenshot. Then you actually look. The torso is smoother, the bulk sanded down into something closer to a real running silhouette. Shoulder padding that used to sit like body armor gets thinned out until it stops fighting the actor's frame. New paneling shows up around the hips and thighs, shaped like it exists purely to cut wind resistance at speed. And the flat leather that defined the red sections for 2 straight seasons gets swapped, panel by panel, for a textured, almost mesh-like surface that catches daylight completely differently, especially in the Savitar scenes and the Flashpoint timeline where the show finally shoots this costume in full sun instead of hiding it in warehouse darkness. That is not a touch-up. That is close to a full rebuild, executed with the specific goal of nobody clocking it as one. Compare that to the emblem swap from the season before, the one loud fix everybody actually noticed and argued about online. This time the correction goes underground, into the stitching and the shoulder foam instead of the logo. The suit stops announcing its improvements and just starts quietly not embarrassing the guy wearing it. Grant Gustin still spent that entire season sweating through fabric built to survive stunt work, cameras, and Vancouver humidity, all so the audience could get a hero who finally looked like he was built to run instead of built to survive a fistfight. And that is the strange comedy sitting underneath this whole entry. A near-total redesign, engineered on purpose to be invisible, ends up being the one suit fans forget exists. The upgrade worked so well it talked itself out of credit. Then the timeline itself got rewritten, and so did he. Barry didn't just come back from erasing his mother's murder. He came back changed. And for the first time, the show let the costume admit it out loud, in the boldest color swing this franchise had ever risked putting on screen. CW Flash Season 4 on 4. Barry Allen died in the Speed Force and came back a different color. That's not a metaphor. He gets swallowed by pure energy at the end of Season 3, and when he steps out of it in the Season 4 premiere, the suit on his body is the brightest red this show has ever committed to. Not a lighting trick, not a one-episode teaser. A full comic-saturated red that stays for the rest of the season, paired with gold forearm and boot accents so pronounced they practically glow when he runs. The timing is not an accident. This show has spent 3 seasons treating color like a liability, and now it hands Barry the loudest suit yet at the exact moment he's supposed to be reborn. Every earlier fix was quiet. A stiffer chest piece here, a smoother cowl there, changes only the most obsessive fans would clock frame by frame. This one is loud on purpose, and it does not try to hide it. The costume department is no longer whispering an apology for what came before. They're saying it out loud in bright red on the poster for every casual viewer to see without squinting. And it works, because the man wearing it can finally move in it. The materials get more flexible in Season 4, which sounds like a footnote until you remember what Gustin was fighting through in earlier seasons. Leather-heavy builds that fought back against every full sprint and hard landing. That's the actual cost of 3 seasons of realistic armor. A guy trying to play the fastest man alive, while his own costume made sure he never quite looked it. Sprint after sprint, season after season. Here's the part that keeps the whole thing from being a clean victory lap. The chin strap survives, untouched. Every other piece of Barry's face gets softened, the jawline less severe, the cheeks less angular, but that one strip of fabric under his chin makes it through the biggest redesign of the show's run completely unscathed. Like nobody on the costume team wanted to be the one to finally cut it loose. It's the last visible scar tissue from the show's original fear, sitting right there under a face that's finally allowed to look hopeful. Bright red and gold above, a nervous holdover below. Progress and hesitation, stitched into the same collar, on the same suit. In the same season, everyone called a fresh start. And the very next year, they'd finally rip off that last stubborn holdover, triggering one of the loudest costume wars in the show's history over whether a bare chin made him look modern or unfinished. CW Flash Season 5x6. Barry Allen finally lost the chin strap, and the internet lost its mind. October 9th, 2018. Season 5 premieres, and the cowl comes back with one tiny piece missing. That strap under the jaw, the one holding the mask together since Season 1, is just gone. Suddenly, there's bare skin between the mask and the neck, and somehow that's the detail that breaks the fandom. The costume team spent years peeling off leather, dropping padding, brightening red. Nobody complained about any of that. Take away one strip of fabric, and Barry apparently looks like he ran out the door with an unfinished helmet. Forums erupted, memes multiplied. People who spent 4 seasons begging for less armor suddenly missed the strap like it was load-bearing. It wasn't just the strap. The whole silhouette thins out here, tracking closer to Gustin's actual frame instead of a padded suit trying to look bigger than he is. Panels get cleaner, red gets brighter. And right alongside it, Nora West Allen shows up, a speedster from the future standing next to her dad in the most streamlined suit the show has built yet. 2 generations of Flash, and the newer one looks like the sketch got closer to finished. Season 6 barely touches the design. A tighter fit here, a small refinement there, while the show pushes toward blood work and the countdown to crisis. Nobody's rebuilding the suit again. They're just living in the version they landed on. But that chin strap fight says something the show never says out loud. 4 seasons ago, they were terrified a comic bright suit would look silly. Now, grown adults are fighting over 1 square inch of exposed jaw, like the whole modern hero project could collapse over a missing buckle. That's not a costume complaint. That's what happens when every tiny compromise gets treated as sacred once fans have been burned by change before. The suit was getting closer to the comic. The fear just moved to smaller and smaller places to hide. But the show wasn't done apologizing, and across its last stretch, it would quietly correct nearly every complaint at once, building the suit fans would finally call the one they should have made all along. CW Flash final seasons, 9 years in, the show finally builds the suit it could have built on day 1. No new gimmick, no fresh material stunt, no desperate rebrand. Just the comic, rendered clean, like the costume department ran out of excuses. That's the surprising part. After 6 years of chasing texture and shadow, the fix for everything wrong with the suit turned out to be structural, not creative. The chin strap problem, the bulky cowl, the silhouette that fought Grant Gustin's face instead of framing it. Seasons 7 through 9 solve all of it with better engineering, not another reinvention. The result is brighter, genuinely brighter. The torso streamlines, the gold on the arms, belt, and boots finally balances instead of competing for attention, and the harsh dark paneling that defined the early seasons fades out almost completely. This is the suit that stops arguing with the source material. The cowl is the real headline. For 2 straight seasons, fans complained about fit around the jaw and a profile that looked pinched under studio lights. The final era cowl corrects that directly, tightening the construction so the shape reads clean from every camera angle. Gustin spent years sweating inside compromises. This is the first version that looks like it was built for him instead of survived by him. When the series finale aired on May 24, 2023, that refined suit was the image the show chose to go out on. Not a callback to the leather years. Not a nostalgia play. The finished version, front and center, exactly as marketing had been selling it in every poster and trailer for 2 seasons straight. And that timing matters more than it looks like it should. Fans did not just like this suit. They called it the version that finally got it right. Which is a strange thing to say about Season 9 of a show that had 8 previous chances. It only makes sense if every earlier suit was never really a different idea. Just an unfinished draft of this one. 9 years to admit the comic had the answer the entire time. Yet while television spent 9 years crawling back to color, the movies were sprinting the exact opposite way, strapping a bright comic hero into scavenged parts and calling that Survival Justice League suit. A brand new Barry Allen walked onto movie screens in 2017 with 3 decades of Flash suit history available to learn from, and the film chose to relearn the oldest mistake in the book. Television had just spent years proving color could work. The movies opened with scavenged NASA parts and segmented armor plates instead. Justice League hit theaters on November 17, 2017, and gave Ezra Miller's Barry a suit built from dark red plating layered over a shadowed underlayer, held together by visible black straps and metallic connectors. In-film dialogue frames it as heat-resistant, cobbled from aerospace and NASA-grade scraps, the kind of thing a broke kid would actually build in a garage. That's the point. Every strap and connector is doing the same job the CW's leather once did, telling you this hero needs protection from his own body before you're allowed to enjoy him. The bolt sits small on a chest plate, and lightning motifs get etched into the panel edges, just to remind you this guy moves fast, even when he's standing completely still. The helmet doubles down. Side lightning bolts, a chin strap, a shell built to look like it could survive an impact instead of a mask built to look like a comic page. It reads less like a superhero costume and more like riot gear with good branding. Fans split almost exactly the way they did over the leather jumpsuit years earlier. Half the audience loved the tactical, lived-in identity, something that finally looked distinct from every other Cape movie. The other half saw a busy, overplated mess that buried the one detail that actually made this character special. Nobody was fighting about acting or plot here. They were fighting about whether Barry Allen was allowed to look like Barry Allen. And that's the quiet tragedy sitting underneath all that armor. A guy who runs faster than sound gets dressed like he's defusing a bomb because somewhere in a design meeting, color still read as a joke and steel still read as serious. Television had already run this exact apology and already found the exit. Film just didn't get the memo, or didn't want to. But the same actor's Barry would get one more chance, and this time, the suit would stop pretending speed was something to armor against and start wearing it like light itself. Ezra Miller's movie suit, 33 years of Flash suits, and it took until 2023 for one of them to just glow, not reflect light, not catch a lightning bolt from outside, glow from the inside. Like the Speed Force finally got tired of waiting in the wings and moved into the fabric itself. The Flash hit theaters on June 16, 2023, and Ezra Miller's Barry Allen stepped out in a suit that looks almost liquid, smooth and unified, with circuitry-like grooves running across the chest and arms. Those grooves light up the second Barry runs. That's not a texture choice. That's the entire 33-year argument settling itself on screen in real time. Think about what got dropped to make room for it. No more visible straps. No more segmented plates doing the believable engineering bit that the 2017 armor was so obsessed with. The emblem sits bigger and cleaner on the chest now, easy to read even in the chaos of multiple Barrys sharing a frame, which is exactly the kind of clarity a comic panel has always had for free. The cowl is still full coverage, but the shaping is softer, closer to a mask than a helmet. It implies advanced material instead of shouting it, and that's the whole trick. The suit stopped trying to convince you it could survive a car crash and started trying to show you what speed actually looks like moving through a body. Every suit before this one flinched at that idea. The 1990 rubber armor bulked Barry up like he needed the mask to be taken seriously. The CW spent seasons circling back toward brighter red before it trusted the color outright. Snyder's armor plating was still whispering military, still scared of looking too much like the page. This is the suit that stopped apologizing. No fans needed a poll to tell them the glowing channels read as power. You can see it happening, right there in the frame, light chasing itself down Barry's arms every time he breaks into a sprint. They didn't spend 3 decades hunting for the right Flash suit. They spent 3 decades being afraid to admit the comic had it right on page 1. The moment a suit finally glowed with pure Speed Force, the apology was complete. The answer was never realism. It was permission to look impossible. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.